guys, and welcome back again to another amazing episode. And as you guys already know, this is the Diaspora Transition episode where we have dialogue with diasporans who are currently living here on the continent, transitioning into the continent as well. Today, we do have here someone very special. I call him a professor, doctor, but he goes by the name Seth Badu. He's been, doing a lot, for black people. Listen, I'll let him introduce himself, but he's a big deal. He's here on the show with us today to discuss, to have a very deep dive conversation. So without further ado, Seth Badu, welcome on the show.
Well, thank you, sir. I sure appreciate you allowing us to have this conversation. I call myself Seth, and I think that works for me. Seth is fine. And in terms of introduction, I tell people I was born in Monrovia, Liberia. So I am Liberian by birth. My parents came from Ghana, came from Pram. So
yeah.
by parentage, I'm Ghanaian.
Okay.
I've lived in the United States now for about approximately 44 years.
Interesting.
So I'm a naturalized United States citizen. So I am Liberian, Ghanaian, and American.
That's nice. That's a good collaboration. Now, let's go back to the beginning of your story before we dive into what you've been working on doing.
Right.
You're retired, but you're still working and doing good things. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But let's go back to the beginning of your story. Who you are, how did it all come about, your upbringing?
Yeah.
Deep dive into who your parents were.
Okay.
And how they even ended up in Liberia.
Okay.
And then we take it from there.
Okay. Let's start with pre-Seth. So my dad worked he was part of the Armed Forces of Ghana. And during World War II, he was stationed in Burma. And that's where he was until, I guess, when the war was over. Came back to Ghana. And for some family reasons and reasons not to be here, he and my mom relocated to Liberia. And became citizens there. So that's where myself and my siblings, I have 5 sisters, and myself, that's where we were all born. I call myself a chief because I have all these sisters, and they all treat me like a chief. So, so that's where we're all born. My siblings, most of them do not really know Ghana, but we're beginning to get more and more acclimated to Ghana. But I went to school here when I was in the 3rd grade. I was shipped on a boat called Titania.
Really?
From Monrovia to Tema. And that's where we landed. And then I was taken, I never knew there was anything called a boarding school, but I was taken to Achimota Primary School. And from Achimota Primary, I went to Laboni Secondary School. Now it's called Senior High. Laboni Senior High now it's called, But I went there from Form 1 to Upper 6. And then left, went back to Liberia. I enrolled at the University of Liberia. I was there, but I began having some what I would call religious liberty issues on campus. And
what do you mean by that? Elaborate on that.
Well, I don't want to get too religious, but I am a Seventh-day Adventist.
Okay.
And I am a Seventh-day Adventist pastor. And for me, Sunday, from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday, it's Sabbath for me. And so I was trying to negotiate with my professor not to take exams on a Saturday.
Interesting.
And the professor, who was a Muslim, told me no problem, but my dean would not allow me to take it on any other day. So on Saturday, I decided I was just going to go to church. They didn't tell my family, anybody. I just went to church. And I did not receive an incomplete. Like if you've done the full course for the semester and you didn't take an exam or you were missing something, normally they'll put an I on your transcript until you take the exam, But I was given an F. So that impacted my GPA. So the next semester, I was put on academic probation.
Interesting.
But right around that time, my church had just refurbished our church, and I had an African American pastor. He invited somebody from the United States to come be our keynote speaker. So on Friday night, I had a youth choir I was conducting, and this guy came and he was sitting up on the front row, and he saw me conducting the choir, and he just asked the president of the church in Liberia, he said, "Who is that young man?" Mm-hmm. And he said, "Oh, his name is Seth," and blah, blah, told him about myself, about me. Mm-hmm. I never actually spoke to him.
Interesting.
But not long after that, the president of the church in Liberia called me and said, "Do you want to go to school in the United States? Do you want to go to a school called Oakwood University?" Mm-hmm. It was then called Oakwood College. And I said to him, "I don't have the money to go to."
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And I also said to him, mm-hmm. I've lived in Ghana. I've been in Ghana away from home. Mm-hmm. I wasn't ready to leave my parents again and go to some far off place. I wasn't ready for that. But as God would have it, mm-hmm. the next thing I knew, I was on the plane to New York and down into Huntsville, Alabama.
What year was that?
That was in 1981.
Interesting.
1981, yeah. So I had finished school here in Ghana, and I was in Liberia, enrolled at the University of Liberia. So I was there for 4 years on scholarship. For 4 years scholarship, I never had to worry about paying tuition. And I just tell young people, I said, whatever it is that you believe in and whatever your passion is, be consistent, and God will create avenues and pathways that you've never thought of, and put you in places that you never dreamt of, True. So that was my journey. Yeah.
Wow. So how was it like, being, obviously African, mm-hmm. having the American experience mm-hmm. that early in 1981? Mm-hmm. How was that like?
It wasn't that difficult mm-hmm. because Liberia was, it's different now. Mm-hmm. But in those days when I was growing up, they called Liberia like Little America. We used the U.S. dollar. Mm-hmm. Our school system was based on the U.S. curriculum. Mm-hmm. Our flag looks like the American flag, except it had one star. Mm-hmm. The Pledge of Allegiance is the same as the American, except you say to the Republic of Liberia versus the United States of America. Mm-hmm. You go into supermarkets, the stuff you see in the supermarkets in America is what you saw in Liberia. So it wasn't a shock. Now, for some of the students who were there, mm-hmm. they were, "Oh, you're African," so some of them were trying to play games with us, and I would respond and try to educate them, They told, one guy told me, "Hey, look like I understand people live in trees in Africa," Mm-hmm. I said, "You're correct.
Yeah.
We all live in trees."
It didn't offend you?
No.
Why?
No, because, listen, he got offended because I said to him, the American embassy is on the tallest tree. And he could not appreciate that. And he was telling me I'm being funny. Somebody else came to me and said, "Oh, you speak real good English." I said, "Guess what?" I said, "You won't believe this, but there's something called a miracle." I said, "I landed at JFK and bam, my accent just changed." He said, "You've been funny." They stopped asking me those questions. And I used to be on campus, and everybody I met on campus, I would say hello to. I said, "My name is Seth. I'm from Liberia." And they were like, "This is a cocky fellow," but they stopped bothering me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And getting a scholarship in this hemisphere, that means you must be academically inclined. That was your story?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say I was the best student. I had students when I was at Laboni. Mm-hmm. There were students who would run circles around me. They were smart.
Okay.
I was in the middle somewhere where you could never find me. I was just, But I think Laboni really prepared me because there were several classes that I took that, in fact, I remember taking a class in economics. Mm-hmm. Normally, I would sit in the front of the class for all of my subjects. I learned that in psychology. Mm-hmm. Sit in front of the class, engage with your professor. It will improve your grades. But when it came to I would go sit in the back of the class. While he was teaching, I'll be doing my accounting homework. And when we write exams, he would use me as the model. And he was saying, "Oh, Seth listens." And I knew all that stuff in Ghana.
That's what I'm trying to say. It's like Ghanaians, we really learn a lot.
Yeah.
And I had a fellow who said when he got to America, he was almost on top of the class.
Yeah.
Because we are way ahead.
Yeah, I was on top of my class. I came from the jungle, and I got to America. I was on top of the class.
Was that a miracle too?
Yeah. Nobody could find me in my class in Laboni, but I got to America, and some folks would call me Seth A. Badu, A means I'm making A's.
Yeah.
So, and I was like, well, and I would illustrate because of the way we took exams here. So if they asked you a question, not only do you just scribble down your response, but I would use a graphic illustration to illustrate the point I'm trying to make. And my professor was so impressed. He thought he was the best professor, and he just imparted to me so much knowledge, and he didn't know. It was Laboni.
And sometimes even though here in Ghana, we kind of discriminate our curriculum to say, oh, it's not that good. It is really good when you get out of Ghana.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's speak about your upbringing. Now you are in American culture. How was that like? How did you even get to become who you are, your profession, and stuff like that, even after education, after finishing your first university in America?
Well, I mean, I credit everything to God. God has been, when I say good to me, he's been extremely good to me. And God would put people in your pathway that will direct you where you need to go. I was a junior in college, and an organization in Nashville, Tennessee was looking for some summer interns to do audit work. And my professors recommended me. I didn't know anybody to hire me, So that summer, I went and interned for them. When I finished, I graduated with a degree in accounting, a minor in business administration. We were walking across the stage for me to get my diploma. And the CEO of the company that hired me the previous summer, he was on the stage also and greeting us. And he said to me, Seth, what you doing this summer? I said, I don't know. And he said, come up to Nashville. So graduation was on Sunday, and I went to Nashville. I drove up to Nashville on Monday. And he said, well, you're here to work. I want to put you to work. So I interned again, and then I wanted to go to grad school. I really wanted to go to a school in Berrien Springs, Michigan called Andrews University, but I didn't have the money. So I was going to go to a state university in Alabama. I was familiar with that area, called Alabama A&M. He said, no, you're not going to go to A&M. You're going to go to Andrews University. So he wrote them a letter and said, basically, this young man is going to come. He's going to enroll. Had been accepted.
He vouched for you.
Yeah, but he didn't say he will pay. He just said, please do not give this young man any trouble. He will pay his bills. And what I would do is every summer when I go work for them, I saved every dime that I had. And
what kind of job were you working apart from the internship you did?
That was it. It was just my internship. I would travel. I was traveling through Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, and the Panhandle of Florida, auditing. I was just doing audits. And the company paid for my transportation, so it didn't come out of my check. They paid for my hotel. That didn't come out of my check. I stayed in hotels where they provided you with breakfast, so I didn't pay. And then some of the CFOs or the treasurers who I was auditing, they saw this poor fellow, African fellow, so they'll invite him home for supper. So I basically saved all the money I made without spending, a dime of it.
Interesting.
And registration time, go on campus and just put my money down. When I graduated, they owed me about $16. They owed me, And I had a graduate assistantship too, so that also helped me. Yeah.
How long did you do the auditing for?
I did it for 3 summers.
3 summers.
And by the end of the 3rd summer, by the end of that time, I had graduated with my MBA.
Okay.
And the company I was interning for, they had a position that was opened, and they kept it open for 6 months until I was done. And then they hired me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's what you did for?
That's where, so I started as an auditor, as an accountant. Then I became controller. Then I became the CFO. That's where my journey started. So I've been CFO since 1994.
Interesting.
Yeah, I was young, and didn't know much. But so it's been a journey. And then I left there. I was CFO. I did other things. I worked in the organization for about, say, 17 years. And I would say about 9, 10 of those years I was CFO. Then I left there, worked for a health system. Real briefly, I wasn't too crazy about the job. Trust me, racism in America is still...
Did that affect you? Because climbing up, becoming a CFO, do you have that problem where you didn't get some kind of upgrade, increase of payment, whatever,
Well,
because of you being
majority
African
of the organizations I worked for were African American
organizations?
led.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, when I went to work for the health system, that was a little different, and you felt it.
Can you give us just a scenario where you kind of felt like this is because of me being a black person?
Well, I would travel back to when I was a student, and this preacher invited us to his home in Florida, and he was having an evangelistic meeting. He wanted me to be his song leader, and the other guy was his Bible quiz person. So we went down, we got on the bus, went to Florida. So during the daytime, we were free. We had nothing to do. So we said, well, let's walk. There's a store. Let's walk, So we went to the store, looked around. We didn't really have any money. So on the way back, we saw a police car. Police car drove very slow past us. And, police car,
Yeah.
It went this way. Then it came back. Then it went this way. I was like,
Wait a minute.
Then the third time it came around and then stopped and said, gentlemen, may I see your IDs? So
Interesting.
we pulled out our student IDs. We gave it to him. And he said, what are you doing here? I said, well, we're here for evangelism. And we went to the store. We're on our way back. So, I didn't know the rules of America. So I said, so, sir, what's the problem? But he was a nice fellow. And he said, there was a neighbor who called us and said there were 2 black folks walking the neighborhood.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, of course, when we got back to the house, guess how many times I left the house?
Never.
Yeah.
And this is pretty early. What year was that?
That was like 1983.
So it was way worse
Yeah,
at
yeah,
that time.
yeah. And you feel it. I mean, when I was in graduate school, one of my professors said to me, you're not going to amount to anything.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, a white professor. He said, you're not going to amount to anything. And one day, I was sitting in a board meeting as the chair of the finance committee, and I had to sign off on a almost $400 million project, and I had a flashback on my professor. I wanted to call him and say, "Hey,
come check me out."
I just signed off on a,
Yeah.
and I've served on boards, organizations that with revenue like $2-3 billion.
Interesting.
Playing significant roles. So God ignored all those comments, and so I knew to stay focused.
That didn't shatter you?
No, no. Those things don't. It only makes me more determined to do what I have to do what I have to do. Yeah, I mean, the college I went to, some of the young ladies I worked with, they were very receptive when I was working with them. But the moment they knew I was African, some of them
They leaned back a little.
They kind of leaned back a little bit. It was interesting. In my senior year, some of them were struggling with accounting, and I had good grades in accounting. So they wanted to become my study partner. I said, nope. I stay in my room and study. I'm not going to the library. I'm not, yeah. If you didn't like me then,
yeah, now
you don't like me now.
Because you're checking the books very
Yeah,
well.
yeah. And then, so since then, some of them have seen me in different places, in different capacities. They see me speaking at some conventions, and they're like, hey, Seth, hi, how you doing? Doing well.
But it's inspiring because I think your story is a success one, but I'm sure that someone might have been broken by a statement from a professor somewhere saying that you might not become somebody, and they truly kind of believe that.
Yeah.
And now probably they are in a worse position. What would you say to somebody, going through that right now?
You have to stay focused. You have to stay focused and keep your head high. Africans are a proud people. You go back in history and you read about, the leadership on this continent. They were not timid people. So when you leave this continent and you get to those places, you should have that same attitude. Like I said to you earlier on, everybody I met, I introduced myself. And the interesting thing, and this is a black campus, okay, mainly black campus. But if you walk in the cafeteria, most of the African Americans sat on the left side of the cafeteria.
Really?
Yeah.
Away from.
And then if you look at the right side, closer to the door, the Caribbeans, and then the Africans sat by the conveyor belt, where And so what I do is, On day one, I go sit with my people, because they are my people. On day two, I'm hanging with the Caribbeans. On day three, I'm with the African Americans. Folks didn't know where I was from. Folks thought I was
Why
from.
that separation though, if I
Huh?
may ask?
I don't know. You know, there's a thing called, you always want to be with your own. You know, like in America, you have Chinatown. When the Chinese came, they wanted to be by themselves.
Right.
You know, but the thing I didn't like about my folks was that most of them walked on campus with their heads down. So the hierarchy was African American, Caribbean, and African. And I refused to do that. I was like, I can't be ranked like that, you know. And yeah, when we got in the classroom and we had to take courses and stuff, they were not on top. So why should I walk around campus looking like, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I really like that because I think I interviewed a gentleman here. He has a clothing line. Called he custom looks Kwaba Samoa, and he said the same thing, that he was treated like he was lesser.
Yeah.
But he was topping the class.
Yeah.
And everywhere he went,
Yeah.
he just topped the class.
Yeah. Was it the guy from DC or from?
Yeah. I think DC.
Yeah. I think I saw that.
Yeah.
I've been tracking you, so
Thank you.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, obviously, your career is out of accounting, right?
Yeah. My background, accounting. Yeah.
Let's speak on that. You know, to a point where I read your story. At one point in your career, I think in your life, you got diabetes, right?
Yeah.
Was it too much work? How was that? Let's walk through that a bit.
I'm not sure, but you know, one time I went to my doctor and he said to me, "You are pre-diabetic." Okay, what does that mean? You're pre-diabetic. It did not register on my mind. It did not. It just went through one ear and came out the other. I kept doing the same things. He said, to his credit, he said you have to adjust the way you eat and you exercise and blah, 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 and cut back on fatty foods and stuff, you know. Okay.
But you took it lightly.
I took it lightly, you know. So in 2019, I went for a board meeting in Liberia. I was not as strong as, for some reason, I just felt, I didn't feel right. I was using the bathroom a lot. So when I returned, I went to get my physical exam done. And that's something I encourage people to do. Never miss a physical exam. Every year you need to go see the doctor and do a full comprehensive, because you never know. If they catch things early, you may survive. But if they catch stuff late, then you're in trouble. So that's something I try to tell people. But anyway, so I got back and my father-in-law had passed. So we're driving to Florida. And a 12-hour trip turned into almost 18 hours because ever so often I had to stop to use the bathroom. And I was drinking a lot. I was just drinking. I was like, I'm thirsty. So after I went for my physical exam, the doctor, he normally doesn't call me. He calls me, he says, I got to see you. So I went in and he was like, he said, you have diabetes. I want you to go see an endocrinologist, okay, specialist in diabetes. So they put me on 2 insulin shots. I had to start giving myself injection every day. So even at the job, ever so I would go into the men's room, take my shirt, pull my shirt up, inject myself, take tablets, you know. I have to keep pricking my finger to check my glucose level. Every time I eat, you know, I have to check my, you know, just to make sure, you know, it can, you don't want your sugar to go too high or too low. So that's what I was doing. So I went to see her about 7 months later, and her first comment to me was, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I have an appointment. I'm here for my appointment." I mean, she was joking when she said that, but she said, "I've never had a patient who went, my A1C, I think in Ghana, they call it a HbA1c, I think. That's the British, but it's, you know, it tells what percentage of sugar is in your blood. And my A1C was at 14, which means I had 14% of that, which is too high. And I could have gotten a diabetic stroke from that, too high. So I kept on taking my shots, but I began to adjust how I ate. And I would go to YouTube, search on the web, just trying to figure out how to do things differently. Because number one, all of these medications have side effects. And number two, I'm not a friend of needles. I tell doctors when I go to them, I said I'm allergic to needles, and they always laugh at me, but I don't like needles. But anyways, I did the research, I knew how, and I just began to change the way I ate. Yeah. And then I went to an alternative health place in Massachusetts where they teach you how to eat differently and live differently and that kind of stuff. So that I have a coach.
Was it going vegan or what was that?
Huh?
What was that coaching like? What were they telling you?
Well,
to do?
they tell you how to keep your body at an optimum, level. But eventually I decided to go vegan and low carb because all the starches turn into sugar.
Most of our food here in Ghana.
Yeah,
is
cassava, yam, potatoes, all that stuff. It turns into sugar, and it spikes your sugar, and then and then it could impact your nerves. It could impact your sight. It could impact your kidney.
Kidney.
Yeah, it could impact your cardiovascular system. So people die because of not knowing. So I just made that my agenda to see. And so the proof is in the pudding. When I changed my diet, things changed. So I do a lot of public speaking. So wherever I go now, I take about 3 or 4 minutes, unrelated to whatever my assignment is, what I'm speaking on. I tell them, I said, I need you to just give me about 3 or 4 minutes. This is a public service announcement. And I tell them my story. Very few words. And I end by saying, thy food is thy medicine. Okay? I know in parts of Africa, when you get sick and they think you're dying, the conclusion is that somebody has witched you. I'm not saying witchcraft is not real. Yeah. I still believe that, the Bible says we wrestle not against flesh and blood. So there are spiritual powers out there and stuff, but sometimes the spirit that is killing us is the food we are putting in our mouths. Once upon a time, our forefathers, they ate like we eat, but what happened after they got through eating? They grabbed their cutlasses, went to the farm, worked that stuff off, okay? Now you have your air-conditioned house. When you leave your air-conditioned house, you get your air-conditioned car. You leave there and go to your air-conditioned office. And you leave there, you get back in your car, you go home. If you have a meeting someplace, it's air-conditioned. So our bodies are not moving, but we are eating like our forefathers who were out there in the sun working. And that stuff is killing us, And so part of what I'm trying to do now is just to say, can I come to Ghana, and of course Liberia, or any place where God sends me, and try to start telling the story. And if I could get one person, just one, a little boy was walking down the street, the beach with his dad, and several sea creatures had washed ashore. And Daddy picked one up and threw it in the ocean. The son was like, well, Daddy, it's so many of them. You just threw one. And his daddy said, well, son, I made an impact. I made a difference on one. And so that's part of my passion now. It's nothing to monetize. It's just to begin to tell the story. By telling my story and telling people that you can live without insulin shots, And I tell people, I say, if you don't believe me, go on YouTube and check out the current mayor of New York City. He was going blind. He was overweight. His mother had been on insulin for long periods of time in her life. But he chose the vegan diet and changed the way he ate, and it's made a world of a difference.
Is it transferable from parents to kids? Is it?
I hear this, and I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor, so I try to be very careful which lane I'm on. There could be some hereditary markers, but for most of us who have, and there's nobody else in my family that has diabetes. It's just, it's a lifestyle. For me, it's more of a lifestyle.
Can we paint a picture of your lifestyle a bit before pre-diabetic? Just so people out there could see if they are doing the same thing, they should, better check.
Yeah. Well, when you're in the corporate world, and I used to travel a lot. I traveled the globe, including Ghana. Came to Ghana many times, South Africa, Asia, you know. That corporate lifestyle, the rich foods that you eat, you go to these restaurants, and the kinds of foods that they serve you, you'd think you're living, okay? I mean, rich foods. Rich foods. I don't even know how to say it, but yeah. And just hopping from plane to plane, from hotel to hotel. I thought that was the lifestyle. It's not. It's not. Now that I've simplified what I eat, I can name everything in my plate now. You know, I can say this is this.
You know what's going in.
Yeah, I know exactly what's going in my mouth. You know, but for most of us, the food that we eat, we don't really know what's.
You can't even pronounce the name.
You can't even pronounce the name. And on some of the cans, if you try to read all the ingredients, you can't even pronounce poly, blah 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 blah. There's all them stuff they put in there.
They made up.
Yeah, and we have to be. Our food should be nice to the eyes and delicious, sumptuous meal. You know, not to promote this restaurant, but whenever I'm in town here, I go to a place called Tatale.
Tatale, okay.
In Osu. Right across, I think it's called on 18th Link, across from the Trust Hospital. There's a little vegan restaurant there. I go there. Simple, nice food, you know. I don't have to worry about what I'm eating, you know. So it's been a journey, but yeah, pre-diabetes, I ate, you know, and for a while I was a vegetarian, but still the foods I was eating was just too rich.
Is it weird oils?
Yeah, fried foods. You know, we eat a lot of fried.
And what do you think about the average Ghanaian food here?
Yeah.
What do you think of it?
Well, it's bad. It's delicious, but it's bad, and stuff that is good for us we don't like because it doesn't taste as good as, you know. So you eat. If you eat wache, you have rice, you have beans, you have egg, and you have spaghetti. Most of that stuff is starch.
That's concoction.
Yeah, but most of it is starch.
Starch, yeah.
So you're eating sugar, and sugar. Okay? So...
What about red?
Red.
Cocoa.
Well, plantain,
Yeah.
I thought plantain was okay for me. Now, I cannot be prescriptive because everybody's body...
Different.
Yeah. So one day I just said, I took out plantain out of my diet. But one day I was like, man, I got to eat some plantain. So we went to the restaurant in a place called Columbia, Maryland, and I ordered some plantain, and I thought it was delicious. I got home and checked my sugar. My sugar was over 200. And I was like, no.
Just from that plantain?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I can't eat plantain. I love it, you know. Even though when I was in school here, I had a struggle with the red in the dining hall because the beans that they served us, almost every one of those beans had a little creature in it.
Yeah.
So I had to eat the bean one at a time. I take one bean, look around to see if it was.
I know. I think anyone who have been to a boarding house in Ghana knows this.
That was my problem with red. Now if they cook the red beans, the red bean was harder, but the white one, oh man, that was a lot of protein in that stuff, man. Yeah.
But I think diabetes is killing people here in Ghana.
Yeah.
What do you think we have to begin to do differently to help mitigate that or even reduce that drastically?
Yeah, we have to talk about it. And it has to start at the top. Those who are in government, those who are in authorities, the clergy, they have to begin to talk about those kinds of things. You know, for those of us who call ourselves Christians, we say our bodies are the temples of God. Well, if they are the temples of God, then we have to take care of them. We have to, the temple of God. So we have to be careful what we put in. The average person that hears this conversation will say, I can't do that. You know, I can't do that. But when you get to the point where the doctor says, well, in so many weeks, you need to come because we have to cut your toe. Okay? Because the nerve endings are damaged. And to save you, your foot, we have to cut your toe. And next thing, we have to cut your foot. And then next thing you know, you have a stump because it ends at your knee. And then your vision you begin to lose your vision. I had a friend, not a friend, a young man who called me. I spoke in Pennsylvania about 3 months ago. And he was there, and he asked the guy who was leading, "Can I get Seth's number?" I said, "Fine, let him call me." So he called me, and he began telling me about his situation. I said, "Oh, you know."
Mm-hmm.
The more he talked to me, I said, "You have to be careful because you're going to lose a toe."
Mm.
He said, "Oh, I already lost a toe." And I was like, "Well, you're going to lose a foot." So when I get back to the States, I get back next week. The following week, I'm speaking at the same venue again, and he's going to come. We're going to sit down and have a conversation because he's in trouble. And unless there's some serious intervention, he's either going to go blind. And then when you have 2 feet gone, your sight is gone. What is life? Yeah, if you say, "I'm going to eat all the ampesi I want to eat, I'm going to eat all the fufu I want to eat, all the banku and kenke." What is life?
I know someone told me that her grandmom, he traveled abroad for a minute, and they had a caretaker who took care of his grandmom, and then her grandmom called her one day saying that they've not given her food for like a week. It's like, why would you do that to the? She told the caretaker, not knowing that they give her other foods, but they didn't give her fufu.
Yeah.
So it's like, I've not eaten for 1 week because she has not had fufu.
Yeah.
That's how addicted we are to.
Yeah, it's like Liberians. If you serve Liberians all kinds of stuff, and there's no rice, you've not served them. Those are the appetizers, you know. 'Cause in Liberia, we eat rice by the bowl, you know, full plate of rice. You know, that's how we grew up. My mom used to buy rice 100-pound bag at a time. 'Cause we ate rice every day, you know.
And it's also sugar.
It's sugar, you know. It's all sugar, you know. And even with fruits, I don't do bananas, I don't do pineapples, I don't do mangoes. I do only berries. So blueberry, strawberry, raspberry, and one more I can't remember now, but whatever they are. But I do the berries, yeah.
Interesting. What about watermelon?
Watermelon, if I eat watermelon, I have to eat very little because it's you know, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't drink soda. I don't drink Fanta, Coca-Cola, ginger. I don't drink. I drink water. And if I wanted to, if I felt like something that tasted like Sprite or something, I may do one of those how you call it, carbonated water.
Yes, soda. Soda water.
Yeah. It gives it a fizz, you know. But I don't do it a lot. And then once in a while, I would just squeeze some fresh lemon, put some water, mix it with some water, put some ice, and then I have something called stevia. It's a leaf, and out of it they extract this thing, and it's a little like a sweetener. Just a little bit in it, and that's my lemonade.
I like that. And I know obviously in Ghana, hospital bills are expensive, but unlike anything like America, I'm sure that it will be way expensive for even people, diabetic patients right now.
Very expensive. And we don't have real health care. You know?
In America?
No, because what we're doing is we try to treat people after they get sick. Okay? Real health care is keeping people healthy, not going to the hospital when you get sick. It means you put in a lot of money, you know, and if you think about it, it's cheaper to keep people well than to treat them when they're sick. You know, and at some point, you know, you have to go, your kidney starts failing, you have to go on dialysis. You need a new liver transplant. It's expensive. It's expensive. And what we call healthcare is not healthcare, you know. So physical education in school, that's important. You know,
that's a real healthcare.
That's investment. You know, you invest in the kids. In the dining hall or cafeteria, feed the kids the right type of foods, you know. Then, you know, I went to Laboni and I was asking, I just walked around, nobody knew who I was. I went to the dining area and I met with the staff, the kitchen staff. I said, I was here in 75, you know, and we were just having a conversation. I said, so if you have a diabetic student here, how do you feed them? Because they were fixing kenke. It was about 10 women, all of them wrapping the kenke and pushing the leaf in and, you know, getting ready, you know. And I was remembering those days when if you have a fever, you go to the kitchen and they call it otinshinu, you know, the kenke water.
Yeah.
And you put a little sugar in it and you drink it. It's supposed to help your fever, you know. But they said, well, if a doctor sends us a note, we try to find something for them. But nobody has actually done the research to say, what kinds of foods should we be feeding our diabetic,
patients.
So if you're giving them rice, or if you go to the hospital, you have diabetes and they admit you in the hospital. Guess what kind of food they're going to serve you in the hospital?
Rice.
Starch. So where's the healing?
They're pushing you slow.
Yeah. Yeah.
To your end.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
That part. Let's divert a little bit before we end the conversation. You've done a lot with helping NGOs turn around. NGOs that are losing money, trying. Let's speak on that a little bit.
Yeah.
How did you do that? How did you even start to do that?
Yeah.
And what are some of the turnaround stories you've had on this?
Well, I'll give you one because it could take us a long time. I'll just give you one.
Yeah.
So I was living in Nashville, Tennessee, and the CEO of an organization, I was attending a conference with him in Florida. So he said, "Hey, Seth, I need you to talk because I'm looking for a CFO." So I went to his hotel room and we began to chat. And he said, "I really need your help. I never wanted to live in New York. You see all the movies about New York, the trains, the loudness, the crime." And I was like, there were two places I said I would never live, New York and California. California because I don't like earthquakes.
Oh, I see.
And New York was just too,
Chaotic.
Yeah, but New York is not a bad place. But, sometimes you watch too many movies and your mind gets framed. Just like people watch movies of Africa.
Yeah,
and some of those movies were filmed in California, not even on the ground here. And, but anyway, so we had a conversation. So I told him, I said, send me a copy of your financials. I want to see it. So he sent them to me. And I looked at the financials and I was like, whoa, this organization's in trouble. So my wife and I prayed about it. They asked us to come for an interview. Well, by the time I got there, they had already voted a new CFO. So, but the CEO said, "Well, I still want you all to have a conversation with this young man, So I got in there. I knew I didn't want the job, so I think I was a little over dramatic in my presentation to the board, and I was asking them questions, so whose fault is it that you are where you are? And they're looking like me. And I said, the problem is with you all, So I knew they were going to say, look, send this Negro back to where he came from. And, so I get back in the car with my friend. We're driving back to his house. Then they call me. They said, the board wants to speak to you again.
Interesting.
So we turned around, went back there, and they said, we want you to be our CFO. So long story, I accepted the job. I had to make some tough decisions. I was not the most popular CFO they've ever had, but I brought discipline to how we managed the money. And I said, you can spend $1 only once, not twice, not 3 times. So when the dollar is gone, it is gone. I have department heads who will get frustrated with me because they blow their budgets and then they're like, well, I still have this trip to Toronto I need to go to. I said, well, my brother, you have to stay home. You can't go. Now I said, if you want to go negotiate with your other departments and they're willing to release funds to you, I try to micromanage people, but I say to them, the bottom line is the bottom line. This is how much money we have, and that's all we're going to spend. And we did that for 3 years. And within 3 years, our cash position, significantly changed.
What was their coffers like in terms of total?
This organization, I think revenue there was about maybe $54 million annually. But the problem was not revenue. The problem was management and expense. They will vote a budget, but nobody paid attention to the budget. And I walked in there and I said, now this is the budget. This is your second Bible. You're going to have to live by this. And nobody goes in excess of what has been voted. Now, you can move things around. You can spend more money on office supplies, less on phone. I'm not going to micromanage you. But as far as I know, when you hit that bottom line,
that's it.
You off the ship for now. You have to wait till next year. And within 3 years, it worked itself out. Now, there was a guy who worked with us. We laid off about 50 employees. And I knew he was angry with me. So one day I was in New York for a funeral. And in New York City, there's no parking. Parking's a problem. So you have to go park like blocks and then walk. So I'm walking to the church, And this guy who was one of those we terminated saw me. And he said, Mr. Bardu, Mr. Bardu. I said, yeah, hey. He said, can I talk to you? Okay, I'm checking to see, hey, we're in New York now, we're in the streets of New York, So he said, I want to tell you something. When you came to New York, I really used to hate you. I said, oh. Then his second sentence was, but you know what? Mm-hmm. You've really helped this organization, and I want to thank you for that.
Interesting.
And I said, well, praise God. So that's just one example of using the gifts that, and I cannot take credit for any of it. There are some things that you will never find in the accounting textbook. I could be sitting someplace, and God would just somehow, and that's been my story, So that's why even in my organization, BarduAssociates.com, if that's my website, my niche is to help those kinds of companies, and I've decided to stick with nonprofits because that has been my world. I don't want to venture too far from there, but I understand nonprofits and how it operates. And I tell people this. I work in one place, and the first statement I made to the organization was, where there's no mission, where there's no margin, there's no mission.
I see.
Even for nonprofits. Because if you do not make margin, or you do not make we don't call it profit because you're a nonprofit.
Right.
So you may want to call it something else.
Right.
So if you do not make a little excess money, how are you going to maintain the property? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? And we are good at starting stuff, but we are bad at finishing stuff.
Sure. Sure.
The house we have here at Lakeside, Airbnb. One of the things I'm doing is I have somebody who's at my house right now. We have a reverse osmosis machine. It has to be maintained at least twice a year. I cannot. System, I cannot say, well, we don't have the money, so we're not going. No, there are some musts that you have to do if you want to keep things going. So for every non-for-profit, you have to have some margin in order to be able to accomplish the mission, whatever the mission is. And so, some people don't like hearing that kind of stuff. And I tell them this. There's a proverb that says, go to the ant, consider its ways, and be wise, in Proverbs. Ants are busy. I know we have the rainy season and the dry season here. In the United States, you don't see ants out in the wintertime. Because it's just too cold, they can't come out. But all year round, they are busy. They are gathering, they are working, because they know winter is coming. And they need to have enough, And COVID is a great lesson on how to operate your organization. Because if you're just living hand to mouth, and your revenue dries up, you're toast. You're done. You're done. Okay? You have to build a working capital. And I recommend to nonprofits, there was a time they said, well, if you have 2 or 3 months of reserve, you're good. I say have at least a year.
A year.
So that if you have...
COVID lasted over a year.
Huh? Yeah, it did. But, it began picking up, but at least a year. If you can have at least a year's worth of operating expenses set aside, that you don't have to react like others had to do. Some people had to fire all their employees right away, shut down. I mean, it was very drastic. And I'm saying, be like the ant, and let's store, because when winter shows up, you will be ready, and others will not be.
I love your Proverbs. You are a minister. Now, before we get into that, let's speak about the nonprofit a bit. What has been the recurring problems that you identified across board, or the NGOs that you had to help? That was kind of common.
Well, I think the mindset of we are nonprofit, that terminology, nonprofit, messes people's minds out. So it's like, well, we're nonprofit. We're not supposed to make money. So we live day by day. We trust in God. And God is saying, yeah, I want you to trust me, but I've given you enough common sense. You watch those ants. They're not saying by faith in the wintertime we're going to succeed. They are working. And the Bible says, faith without what? Works is dead.
Interesting.
So, yeah, we should have the faith, but God expects us to work. And if we do our part, God will bless us. And so that's my message to nonprofits. Do your part, and if you need help, we're here to help you and support you the best way we can. So, yeah.
Awesome. I'm going to leave all the details on the screen and as well in the description. Reach out. And for me, I'm a for-profit, but I need an advice.
Mm-hmm.
We are not making money. What do you think we should do?
Make money. Well, you have to come up with a strategy, and I'm not sure how you operate, but you have to make sure that, number one, when you're projecting your revenue for the year, that you aligned your expenses with your revenue. That's one. Now, if you're not generating the kinds of revenue that you need, then that's a whole different. You may have to start changing your strategy in terms of revenue generation. That's really key to any organization being successful. Revenue has to be there in order for you to sustain your business. And then once you've done that, then you come onto the management and expense side of it and say, okay, how are we able to use these resources to accomplish the goals that we need to accomplish? Not just for the short term, but you also have to start planning for long term. So if you are for profit, then yeah, you need to have the kinds of profit that will help you, just like the non-for-profits, to build reserves. There are going to be good months and slow months.
Yeah.
So when you have those slow months, then you are positioned to keep on keeping on. Because if you start firing the people that you're dependent on, then you don't have the manpower to continue.
True.
So it's the people who make up the organization. And they're the most important asset that you have. I tell people, treat people right. Always. People should be number one in any organization. And if you treat them right, when those moments come when the company is struggling, trust me, they will hang with you even if they have to say, listen, we know things are not there and there's no pay. We can discuss pay later, but let's keep on going. Because you cannot do it by yourself.
No.
You need a team around you to make that happen.
That's true.
So treating people right. So what I personally, every job I have had, I try my very best to make sure that people who work with me know that they are very important to me. I check on them. I walk the floors, not to ask them if they've done their job. I want to know how their family is doing,
Love it.
how the kids are doing, how are you today? If there was death in the family, how those kinds of things. I make my rounds every day. I get to my desk, I say a quick prayer, I get out of my desk, I start making my rounds, and I talk to my people. And a day is going to come when I need them. I remember one day, and I'll be real brief on this, but one day we were getting ready for a board meeting, and things were just not ready. We stayed in that office till about 3 o'clock in the morning, trying to get ready. My staff came to me and said, boss, you need to go home. I said, no, I can't go home. I'm going to stick here with you. They said, if you don't go home, then we all going home. So they sent me home. I came back at 8 o'clock in the morning. They had gone home around 6 o'clock, showered, and they were there at 8 o'clock.
Interesting.
There was something I was doing for them. The way I was treating them gave them that extra oomph to say, we're in this together. And I don't mind rolling my sleeves up to get the work done.
But have you seen the dynamic in Ghana when they say if you treat your employees nice, that they will take advantage of you? Or
Well, there are people who will do that. It's a culture that has to be nurtured. It's a culture that has to be developed. Ghana is very laid back. And the corporate culture here is, it's different. It's very different. But there are people. I had an electrician who come by yesterday. I told him, he said, I'll be there at 8 o'clock. I watched the time, but it was raining yesterday. It was heavy rain. Right at 8:30, he came on his motorbike, and he said, oh, the rain. But I knew he would have been there at 8 o'clock. So they are here. There are people like that. Now, there are some people who, I had another guy, we stopped using him when we had to do some work around the house, and we say, oh, Alex, we need this thing done. He may show up literally 2 months later. Yeah. Yeah. And I tell people, I say, that means you don't respect me, you don't value my time.
True.
But it takes us to change, it takes time to change the culture. You have to be intentional about it. You have to demonstrate that yourself. If you say you're going to be somewhere, you have to be there, and not say
Do you
I'm the
think
boss,
that attitude is impeding growth?
It is, big time. It impedes growth, it impedes productivity, it impedes your gross national product, because people are just laid back, and we have to pick up our footsteps just a little bit more and and sometimes you have to push people along the way till they get it, I had a group who worked with me when I was in New York, and I would tell them we'd meet at 9 o'clock, and they'll start showing up at 9:50 and 9:30. And I just said to them one day, I said, folks, if you're going to come at 9:30, please don't come to my meeting. I said, please don't come. and they knew I was serious. And I would put pressure on them because the work ethic was a little different before I became CFO. And I told them, these are the deadlines. We have to meet them. And if we cannot meet them, we have to have good reasons why we did not meet them.
Interesting.
So when the auditors would come before, it would take the auditors sometimes 8 weeks to audit us. By the time I left there, the auditors would be on Monday, and by Friday they were done. And they said to me, oh, Seth, this feels good. I said, y'all were fussing with me, right? Because you didn't appreciate what I was trying to do. But now you see, I can leave you all in peace, and I hope you'll keep it up. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We've had a really, really great conversation, and I'm loving it. I want to dive a little bit deeper into the ministries that you've been doing, because I saw you still praying with people online. I'm like, hey, wait, I didn't know you were a minister. So before we dive into that, I want to just plug I have a tour now. I'm doing tours to Zanzibar. So if you're watching this, we are doing tours now. Web Nation Traveler and Tour. We're going to Zanzibar in November. So as you can see on the screen, reach out to us. It's going to be a luxury experience. If you are an entrepreneur, this is your chance. It's a cheat code. We literally, take you on a trip. You visit some of the most amazing places in Zanzibar. And after we're done with all that, we get to introduce you to multi-millionaires who are working on ground. So basically, they tell you all their experiences, do's and don'ts. And then if you ever, decide to come back and invest, someone to reach out to, or, someone doing it on ground. So it will be somewhere on the screen. Scan it, reach out to us, and save your seat. It's only 14 seats available. So if you don't do it now, you might miss out. So back to the video. Ministry, how did the ministry, you that's what brought you to America in the first place, because you were, if I'm not mistaken,
I was conducting a youth choir,
which is still in the church.
Yeah.
And so many years after, you're still doing it.
Yeah.
What would you say has done to your life, and why you've been on that trajectory to this day?
Well, because I realized that from my teenage years, that God is everything, and without God, nothing happens. That's my belief. Some people try it on their own, and they fall flat on their face. When I went to Labone Secondary School, when I left Achimota Primary, my first week on campus, they used to call us homos. Green. First day on campus, there was a guy who came on our campus, and he said, "I'm from Pre-Sec." And he said, there's an organization called Scripture Union. And he said, they meet in the assembly hall. So on Sunday, go. So Sunday, I put on my white shirt, white pants, went to assembly hall. There was a lady there preaching. It was a Scripture Union meeting. And she talked about being born again. I never heard that, And but she made the appeal. I got up, went up. And that was my beginning of my journey with God. They taught me how to have a quiet time with God every morning. So since I was about 12 years old, every morning, quiet time, just me and God.
If you have a final message to the people watching, what would that message be?
Well, I'll go back to diabetes, and I'll say basically to them, your food is your medicine. Watch what you eat, exercise, trust in divine power, get enough sunlight, and you will be okay. So that would be my message. Just be careful what we put in our mouths, because it's going to determine how we live our lives. And my passion is I can establish some kind of platform in Ghana, and I'm still trying to figure it out, talk with some hospitals and some partners. I have a schoolmate who has a PhD in nutrition, trying to come up with something that on an annual basis, we can promote something in this place, start in Accra and probably spread it, and tell the story that you do not have to live with diabetes for the rest of your life. So I am an example. I'm a prime example of that can happen.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you.
Guys, if it's your first time here, please don't forget to like, share, comment down below. Let's get the engagement going. Guys, YouTube said over 69% of you guys watching this video have not subscribed. You love the episode, you're not subscribing. What are you waiting for? Please subscribe. And it's good news though. Half of you guys are watching this whole thing on TV. So can you believe 50% of our monthly listeners and viewers are watching on TV?
Wow.
So I'm surprised when I saw that.
Yeah, well, I subscribe though.
Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, please like, share, subscribe, share to friends and family so they can also benefit from this episode. And yeah, without further ado, let's just say bye-bye to the people watching. All right, peace.